For years, voices on Britain's fringes have claimed to be the final defenders of national liberty, but the legislative record since 2000 suggests a different pattern. The state's most significant expansions of power directly followed the chaos these groups created. This dynamic relies on the existence of genuine societal fractures. Citizens raised concerns regarding immigration rates, the handling of grooming gangs, and high-profile policing failures. Rather than engaging with these issues, the political establishment frequently dismissed or smeared those raising them, leaving a massive vacuum in the national conversation. When legitimate grievances are ignored by the center, the field is left open for a movement that prioritizes spectacle over strategy. This void was filled by the English Defence League and its successors. They presented themselves as a fearless alternative to a distant political class. However, the leadership of these factions, dominated by figures like Tommy Robinson, favored personal branding and digital engagement over building a disciplined political movement. What they delivered was not a coherent challenge to the state, but street protests defined by poor discipline, inflammatory rhetoric, and public disorder. This disorder provided the government with the visual evidence it needed to justify a broader clampdown on civil liberties that would eventually affect the entire population. The mechanism for trading public freedom for state security has been under construction in Westminster for over 2 decades. In the early 2010s, street actions by groups like the EDL began to correlate with localized spikes in recorded hate crimes and public fear. The state used the optics of this violence to request new tools, effectively using the actions of a fringe minority to rewrite the rules for everyone. This data tracks the rise of far-right protests against the introduction of new speech laws. The Racial and Religious Hatred Act of 2006 followed a peak in street activity, lowering the legal bar required to criminalize threatening behavior. These laws prioritized the prevention of potential disorder over the preservation of existing rights, normalizing a new level of police discretion. By the mid-2010s, a reliable pattern had stabilized. State authority expanded in direct proportion to the level of visible disorder on the streets. The cycle accelerated in the 2020s. Post-Brexit demonstrations offered fresh data for the state's next legislative move. The result was the Police, Crime, Sentencing, and Courts Act of 2022. This law introduced heavy fines for assemblies and gave officers the power to restrict protests based on how much noise or disruption they might cause. This changed the threshold for state intervention. The police no longer required a riot to act. They only needed to cite the potential for public annoyance. The 2024 Southport riots, fueled by disinformation and online rage, brought this cycle to its peak. The government response was swift. Authorities carried out over 1,200 arrests in days, leading to multi-year prison sentences based on social media activity alone. The Public Order Act of 2023 provided the legal backbone, introducing suspicionless stop and search and geographic bans for those accused of causing disruption. These riots also provided justification to enforce the Online Safety Act, granting the state unprecedented oversight of digital speech. The 2024 Labor Manifesto explicitly cited this period of unrest to advocate for even tighter enforcement on the general public. The cumulative effect is visible in public polling, with 43 emergency powers introduced to combat one specific threat rarely remain confined to that target. The dragnet has already widened. Since their introduction, these public order laws have been used to arrest over 800 people from non-far-right groups, including peaceful environmental and anti-war protesters. By 2025, the chilling effect reached the average citizen, with an average of 30 speech-related arrests occurring every day. Legislation marketed as a shield against extremists is now used to regulate the speech and assembly of the ordinary public. This exposes the core failure of performative politics, the belief that digital rage and street-level chaos equate to a successful rebellion. An empowered security state does not negotiate with disorganized anger. It uses it as the raw material for building more comprehensive controls. Defending national identity requires a level of moral clarity and strategic discipline that is incompatible with street violence. Without that discipline, the cycle continues, and the resulting laws ensure a permanent loss of liberty for every citizen. Movements that provide the state with the justification to strip away freedoms ultimately serve as the government's most effective excuse.